with the new COVID-19 variant. To give us more details on this, we have Maricel Halili reporting live from Mandaluyong. Mase, could you tell us who are the foreigners who are now qualified to enter the country?
Charles, despite the threat of the new COVID-19 variant, the Philippine government has decided to allow more foreign nationals to enter the country starting February 16. These are the foreign nationals that have or who have visas issued as of March 20, 2020 and are still valid and existing at the time of their entry. Others who are allowed to enter the country are holders of valid and existing special resident and retirees visa and Section 9A visas. These should be presented along with an entry exemption document to the Immigration Bureau upon arrival. Despite the expanded coverage for the entry of foreign nationals, there are certain conditions that must be followed. Foreign nationals are required to have a pre-booked accommodation for at least 6 nights in an accredited quarantine hotel or facility. They are also subject to COVID-19 testing at the quarantine hotel on the 6th day from the date of arrival. And foreign nationals are subject to the maximum capacity of inbound passengers at the port and date of entry. Palace spokesperson Harry Roque, however, clarified that foreign tourists are not yet allowed to enter the country. He noted that the Foreign Affairs Department hasn't resumed the issuance of tourist visas since last year. Meanwhile, the Interagency Task Force also adopted the recommendation on the criteria for allocation of the first batch of Pfizer vaccines. The one-tranche delivery will be provided for healthcare workers. The updated priority groups are the following. First in line will be the frontline workers in health facilities, both national and local, as well as private and public. These include health professionals and non-professionals like students, nursing aides, janitors, and barangay health workers. This group will be followed by senior citizens aged 60 years old and above, persons with comorbidities, frontline personnel in essential sectors including uniformed personnel, and indigent population. They are followed by teachers and social workers, other government and essential workers, socio-demographic groups, and OFWs. Those are the bottom of the list, and the remaining workforce and the rest of the Filipino population. Charles, so far the Interagency Task Force has also approved the recommendation of Baguio City to allow their hotels to accommodate leisure travelers. And also, they have approved the recommendation to allow government officials as well as government personnel to travel in any part of the country without following the health protocols or the mandatory test protocols, rather, of the local government units of their destination. It means that, well, they don't have to undergo the required test per local government unit. So I just want to be clear about that, because there are other protocols that are being implemented by the airports, by the airlines, so they still have to follow those protocols. Charles?
Thanks for that, Maricel Halili, reporting live from Mandaluyong. What happens if a person receives combined shots from 2 COVID-19 vaccine brands? This is the question that British researchers are currently trying to answer. Britain launched a trial to assess the immune responses generated if doses of COVID shots from Pfizer and Astrazeneca are combined in a 2-shot schedule. Researchers said results of this trial could help determine whether vaccines can be rolled out with greater flexibility around the world. Initial data on immune responses is expected to be generated by around June, as over 800 participants are seen to take part in the study.
Everyone is already looking ahead to what happens next if we have new strains, and if people's immunity wanes and they need boosting, what about the 3rd dose or maybe even a 4th dose? I think there's a lot of interest in using different vaccine technologies for that, mixing up the vaccine technologies for that 3rd, 4th dose. For the similar ideas I've just been talking about, that it might be beneficial.
Due to the prevalence of COVID-19, experts have been trying to figure out ways to prevent future pandemics. The first step is pathogen surveillance. But what does this mean exactly? Let's watch this.
One of the key things about the 10 early stages of an epidemic or a pandemic is detecting it as early as possible, and then having some forecast or understanding at the early stages of where it's going to go and how big a threat it poses. So one proposal is we really need to treat all these emerging viruses that are out there, and there's potentially, I think, 1.7 million potential viruses out there that, and some of them could pose a threat. The odds for each individual one is low, but there's just so many viruses out in bats and other animals out there, and there's more people interacting with them that the proposal is, we should treat these, more like we treat as a national security threat. And like we do with terrorists, and we should have active surveillance networks trying to find out, which are the most threatening viruses in animals. So there's just some better sense of what's out there. There's just a few mutations away from something that could become transmissible, the next Ebola or the next coronavirus. So there's other viruses that are really terrifying called paramyxoviruses, and some of those have caused, fatal brain swelling outbreaks in various parts of Asia and Australia. A bunch of those. You haven't heard of that because it's been smaller scale, but those can also potentially spread or infect respiratory tract, which is really alarming. So we should find out, survey, we literally go out and sample animals and survey, get a viral genome project, virome project, so we know kind of what's out there, because we don't know what's out there right now fully. And then the other thing that we fell short at, we really need to do better at, is, in the early stages of the pandemic, there just wasn't a feeling there was worry, but there wasn't enough of a specific local feeling, how fast is it going to spread and where, and how much does it pose a threat in your country. And one of the proposals that is out there is to create something called essentially a national weather service, except for forecasting emerging epidemics and predicting the threat to specific places and locations, and have kind of some better models of what's going to happen. What that would do is would give policymakers and local officials and governors and et cetera, some information like the National Weather Service does when a storm is coming, and some information on how big a threat it proposes, and that would give them, cover and the ability to act more quickly.
We'll be back with more stories after a quick break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. The Health Department is preparing a master list system for COVID-19 vaccination procedures. Let's get more on this from Greg Gregorio. He's joining us live from Mandaluyong. Greg, good afternoon. Could you tell us what this master list system is all about and when they intend to implement this?
Charles, good afternoon. This master list system will include the total number and a list of individuals who will be vaccinated and will be prioritized once the government starts rolling out COVID-19 vaccines in the country. According to the Department of Health, they have, since the beginning of the year, they have instructed health facilities and local government units in the country to start the processes and procedures to generate this list that we'll be going to use as we start vaccination against COVID-19. Charles?
Right, Greg, how does the Health Department intend to target the priority group or the eligible population from the master list? And are they prioritizing certain areas for vaccination?
Charles, the Department of Health or the government is using a prioritization list in the context of vaccine supply scarcity. And according to this list, those who belong to the top priority or under Group A are those workers in frontline health services and also senior citizens, followed by indigent population, military and uniformed personnel, and then followed by other frontline workers and special populations. And then next is the remaining population. According to the Department Department of Health, since 117,000 doses of vaccines from Pfizer is expected to come first in the country, they will be prioritizing those frontline health workers in the COVID-19 referral hospitals in the National Capital Region. That would be the Lung Center of the Philippines, Jose N. Rodriguez Memorial Hospital, and the UPPGH. And aside from that, they will also identify other areas in outside NCR who could possibly receive this vaccine if supply will still permit after vaccination, after vaccinating those who are in these facilities that I have mentioned. Charles?
All right, vaccines are in short supply, so let's zero in on Manila for now, where we have Vice Mayor Hani Lacuna talking about pre-registration for COVID-19 vaccines. Will the City of Manila accept pre-registration from non-Manila residents?
Yes, Charles, according to Vice Mayor Hani Lacuna, they will accept registration of non-Manilan residents. In fact, she explained that if a person do not reside in Manila, however, but if he or she works in Manila, they could use their work address as resident address upon registration. And since they have launched their pre-registration for the vaccination back in December, more than 80,000 individuals have already been pre-registered in their database. Charles?
All right, let's talk about biosurveillance for a bit. Is the Department of Health also monitoring the possible entry of other COVID-19 variants aside from the UK strain?
Yes, Charles, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere emphasized that aside from monitoring UK variants, the ongoing biosurveillance in the country is also monitoring other variants that have been existing in other countries. And aside from that, Vergere also reiterated that the ongoing whole genome sequencing in the country also monitors the possibility of co-infection. There's still no incident recorded in the Philippines just like that. Charles?
Thank you, Greg Gregorio, reporting to us live from Mandaluyong. Over in California, COVID-19 vaccines may soon be delivered via drones. Let's watch its Bloomberg Quick Take to hear how it works.
Well, I think that everybody's now discovering that when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccine, we've been so focused on development of the vaccine, and now that the time is here to distribute, we're realizing that's a lot harder than we otherwise expected. This is due to the fact that the vaccine has really sensitive temperature requirements, and that makes it particularly hard to deliver in rural areas or places where you don't have a big hospital where you can break a box of 1,000 vaccines and then distribute it to the right people. So what this really comes down to is you want an instant delivery system for medicine so that you can break a box of vaccines centrally and then send a whole bunch of smaller amounts, exactly what's needed, when it's needed, to primary care facilities and hospitals in rural areas so that people in any country can get equal access no matter where they live.
And so walk us through how it will work. How will Zipline be partnering with different facilities to actually get these doses out?
So normally Zipline locates our distribution centers next to a large medical warehouse or a really, really large hospital. This is how we work in Rwanda, Ghana, as well as now in the United States. Those facilities already have pretty good access to the vaccine. It's easy for UPS or FedEx to ship a big crate of vaccine that's cryogenically frozen to that place. But each of these crates comes with 975 doses. And once it's broken, it needs to be immediately given out to everybody. It needs to be put into people's arms. And this is really challenging, as I mentioned, for people who live in rural areas. And so Zipline is taking that last mile. So this means that from that centralized area, we can deliver much smaller doses, exactly what's needed on a daily or even hourly basis to the hundreds of primary care facilities and critical access or rural hospitals in the surrounding areas of that big metro hospital.
And so how will you, you mentioned temperatures, how will you maintain these temperatures for the vaccines?
So the great thing is that we're already partnered with one of the biggest manufacturers of the vaccine to make packaging that will keep the vaccine at the right temperature in transit. Keep in mind that's a very short amount of time, because when you're flying on an electric autonomous vehicle, you can go really fast from the central area to the primary care facility or hospital. But we guarantee the integrity of the cold chain during transit. And so, that 30-minute or 40-minute trip, the vaccine stays at the right temperature. And then once it arrives, if you have 10 doses, 50 doses, however many we're delivering to each primary care facility, it can then immediately be administered to the patients who are there waiting for it.
And those are the top stories of this hour. Join Riza Diaz later at 2 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Just register for a free account at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. We are One News.